My name is Jaxon Lee. And on the day my daughter got married, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Dad, you weren't supposed to come." The crowd was laughing. Champagne was pouring. The band kept playing. But I couldn't hear a damn thing. I've taken bullets, survived storms, buried brothers in arms. Yet nothing ever cut deeper than hearing my own child say I didn't belong. That was the moment I learned you don't need a battlefield to be wounded. Sometimes, your war begins at your own daughter's wedding. The mornings in Portland always start the same. The river moves slow, like an old soldier pacing through his memories. I still wake before sunrise, grind the same dark roast beans, and stand by the window until the first light cuts through the fog. Some habits never retire, no matter how long you've been out of uniform. My life is quiet now, steady, predictable, and small in all the right ways. The house stays clean, the coffee strong, and the silence doesn't hurt as much as it used to. Only one thing still pulls at me. Haley, my daughter. My reason for getting up every morning even when I don't have to. I still remember the day I pulled her out of the water at Cannon Beach, the ocean raging like it wanted to keep her. She was 8, gasping, terrified, clinging to me as if I could stop the whole world from breaking. And I believed I could. I thought I always would. Then came the June afternoon. The phone buzzed across the kitchen counter. Her voice trembled on the other end. "Dad, we're in trouble. The Whitfords pulled out of the wedding funding. How much? $92,000. I'll wire it tonight." Her relief was instant, warm, and sharp enough to make me smile. "Thank you. Dad, you saved us." That night I opened my ledger and wrote one line, "Wedding support, Haley, $92,000. I thought I was buying back a place in her life. But what I really bought was a ticket to a new kind of battlefield, one where honor bleeds quietly and love becomes collateral. 3 days before the wedding, I drove 3 quiet hours from Portland to the Cannon Lake Resort. The lake shimmered like glass under the early evening light, sailboats resting along the dock while guests sipped champagne and practiced their perfect laughter. I wore a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled once, and carried a small navy blue box, the watch I had planned to give Haley, something she'd wanted since she was a child. When I arrived, she hugged me quickly, polite, distracted. Then she turned to introduce me. "Dad. You remember Eleanor, right? Charles's mother." Eleanor Whitford stood poised and polished, her silver hair twisted tight, a string of pearls heavy around her neck, each one gleaming with a little too much pride. She extended her hand with a smile that never touched her eyes. "You've done well, for a military man." I kept my tone calm, steady as a parade march. Service builds discipline. Discipline builds everything else. Her lips curved tighter. "Let's make sure tomorrow's ceremony stays elegant. No uniforms, please." The table fell silent. I took a slow sip of bourbon. Funny thing about war, bullets hurt less than polite disdain wrapped in crystal glasses. As I left, I caught her voice trailing behind me, silky and sharp. "He's respectable, in his own, hard-working way." That night in my hotel room, curiosity itched at me like an old wound. I searched her name, Eleanor Whitford, activist, fundraiser, and a proud opponent of Desert Storm. The same war where I'd earned the scars she now pretended not to see. People like her believe respect is inherited. I've had to earn mine. What I didn't know was that tomorrow, my own daughter would echo her words. The morning sun spilled over the resort, bright and cold. A knock came at my door. Haley, voice small, eyes unsure. "Dad, about tomorrow, maybe skip the uniform?" It might draw attention. There was fear in her tone, or maybe shame. I nodded once. She exhaled like someone being pardoned. Outside, the place buzzed with energy, staff rushing, guests arriving, the Whitford's logo printed on every banner. Then I saw it, sponsored by the Whitford Foundation. My steps stopped short. Sponsored by who? My daughter's wedding, under another family's name. That evening, I stood on the balcony, the lake reflecting the orange of dying daylight. Below, 2 bridesmaids laughed, their voices carried by the breeze. It's amazing. The foundation's covering everything now. Even that donation from Haley's dad looks official. A cold realization settled in. $92,000, my money, folded neatly into the foundation's books as a charitable donation. My name erased, my role rewritten. I wasn't the father of the bride. I was a silent benefactor, invisible and convenient. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the watch box, and ran my thumb over the engraving on the back. For Haley, my reason to keep fighting. I laughed under my breath, not bitter, just tired. Turns out I'm the only one still fighting in a war my daughter has already surrendered. The wind outside cut through the cracks in the window, cold and relentless. Somewhere deep inside, an old voice from training whispered back to life. Never walk into a fight unarmed, Lee. This time, the only weapon I had left would be the truth. The day of the wedding arrived wrapped in the kind of silence that feels rehearsed. I put on a navy suit, no medals, no insignia, just a silver tie and the old watch I'd been given after pulling 3 men out of the sea in Iraq. No one asked me to be early, but I was there at 10 sharp anyway. At the check-in desk, the young receptionist tilted her head. Sir, vendor or guest? Guest, I said, and added under my breath. At least I used to be. They sat me near the sound crew, well away from the spotlight. Every table closer to the center gleamed with tuxedos and laughter. At the main table, Eleanor Whitford held court like she was hosting a fundraiser, her pearls catching every light in the room. Haley glided through the aisle in white silk, radiant and unreachable. She didn't look at me once. I felt like an old photograph, something once cherished, now out of place in a modern frame. Then came a quiet voice behind me. Sir, something's happening backstage. Travis? I hadn't seen him in years, not since the Navy. He leaned in. They're signing papers, foundation paperwork. I saw the letterhead myself. Looks like tax documents. I nodded, excused myself, and slipped out. In the back hall, 3 women huddled over a buffet table, signing sheets stamped with the Whitford Foundation logo. One of them laughed softly. Now it's official, all covered by the foundation. Her tone was casual, but the word foundation cracked like gunfire in my head. I took a quick photo, first evidence. When I returned, Haley intercepted me, face tight. Dad, why are you walking around? Just taking a look at what I paid for. Dad, not today. Please, let's just get through this. Get through what? Your wedding or your conscience? She turned away without answering. The distance between us couldn't be measured in feet anymore. It was made of something colder. When the speeches began, I waited for my name. Charles spoke, then Eleanor. Every toast was polished and practiced. No thank you, no father, no mention of the man who helped make this day possible. I sat there, smiling for no one, listening to confetti cannons drown out the ache in my chest. Later, when the guests began to leave, Haley approached again, voice soft but sharp at the edges. Dad, thank you for being here, but some of the guests feel uncomfortable. Maybe you should go early. You're telling me to leave? Dad, please. You weren't even supposed to come. The words hit harder than any bullet. In a single breath, she erased 26 years of being her father. I walked out into the night. The lake was still, the surface glowing gold under string lights. I lit a cigarette for the first time in 10 years and let the smoke burn my throat. So, this is what dishonor feels like, I murmured. The wind picked up, the smoke scattered, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a soldier who'd lost a war without ever firing a shot. I didn't leave, not yet. A soldier never abandons the field before he understands what kind of enemy he's facing. I slipped back into the prep room where staff were packing up trays and linens. On a table sat a folder labeled Whitford Foundation, Expense Summary. I opened it and read the first line. Funding sources, private donation, JL92. My own initials, my own money, turned into a code, a donor, not a father. I laughed quietly, the sound bitter in my throat. Even in their paperwork, I wasn't invited. Haley was still inside, changing out of her gown. I stepped into the room. Do you even know what they did with my money? She froze, eyes tired. Dad, please don't start. They used it to cover tax fraud. Haley, your wedding's a shell game. It's complicated. No, it's criminal. Dad, don't make a scene. Please. That phrase, don't make a scene, colder than any command I'd ever heard. That's how truth dies, suffocated under polite smiles. She met my stare but couldn't hold it. You don't understand how things work now. Mom's world is gone. Eleanor's family. They live differently. Differently or dishonestly. You wouldn't get it. And I did get it. My daughter had learned their language, where image outranks honor and silence passes for class. I walked out, unfastened the Navy insignia on my wrist, and set it on the buffet table beside the untouched cake. No one noticed. Only Travis did, his eyes meeting mine with the kind of respect that can't be printed on invitations. Eleanor appeared, her perfume arriving before her words. Leaving so soon. Mr. Lee, seems like I was never really here. You were in spirit. And financially, of course. She let the last word linger like a knife twist. I smiled, the kind that carries no warmth. Money can buy champagne. It can't buy class. But it can buy silence, she murmured, smiling back. That was it. The shot fired across the bow. Not with bullets, but with arrogance. Rain began to fall as I walked to my car. Each drop on the windshield sounded like the ticking of my old watch, steady, relentless, years of service, of loyalty, of faith, all washed into the gutter. They mistook my patience for weakness. Big mistake. The night after the wedding, I drove home through a downpour, still wearing the same soaked suit. On the table waited a photo of Haley at 8, laughing in my arms. Now, it only hurt to look at. I opened my laptop and stared at the sponsorship contract for Cannon Lake Resort. My company's name sat right there beneath security compliance sponsor. They celebrated on my dime, in my venue, under my rules. I called Maya, my former Navy lawyer. She owed me her life once. Now I needed her mind. Maya, look into the Whitford Foundation. Tax filings, donations, all of it. 2 days later, she replied, "It's dirty. Jax." The foundation had been under investigation for using charity funds for private events. My $92,000 appeared as JL92 donation, fraud, tax evasion, leverage. I phoned Alan Price, the resort director. A charity funded a private wedding in your venue. Alan, that's illegal. He panicked, begged for time. If you withdraw, we collapse. Then make a choice, integrity or convenience. I hung up and texted Maya. If they built their empire on my silence, they're about to hear me loud and clear. A week later, the Whitfords hosted a lavish thank you reception. They invited the press to clean their image. I went too, not for revenge, but for truth. Alan waited, pale as chalk. Run the compliance check, I told him. Behind the scenes, my security team, all veterans, stood ready. At 8:15, the lights flickered. Eleanor was mid-speech about transparency when the projector behind her flashed the headline, "Whitford Foundation misused charity funds." The room froze. I stepped forward. "Ma'am, your transparency just arrived." I nodded to Travis. "Sergeant, execute withdrawal." My men cleared the floor with military precision. Music stopped, lights dimmed, glamour vanished. Eleanor screamed, "You can't just walk out. Watch me." Cameras flashed as Maya handed evidence to reporters. Haley's voice broke through the chaos. "Dad, stop. You're humiliating us." "Us? You mean the people who used my name to commit fraud?" she cried. "I was trying to keep peace. Peace without truth is surrender." She let go, tears cutting down her makeup. Driving home, Maya called. "You did it?" "No," I said. Just reminded them who they were dealing with. By morning, the news had spread through every corner of Oregon. Whitford Foundation misused charity funds for private wedding. My name, Jaxon Lee, appeared beneath the headline as the financier who was deceived. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Clients, colleagues, journalists, everyone wanted to know the same thing. Was I truly the victim, or just another fool who paid to belong? I shaved clean, buttoned a white shirt, tied a navy blue tie, and drove straight to Portland City Hall, where Eleanor Whitford was holding an emergency press conference to clarify the truth. She stood at the podium, voice smooth as silk. "These allegations are baseless. Our foundation operates with full transparency." I stepped forward through the crowd, cameras turned toward me. My words came slow and steady. "Transparency? Then you won't mind if I show how my $92,000 became your charity fund." The room fell silent. I laid a folder on the table, bank transfers, resort contracts, Maya's verified statements. Eleanor's face drained of color. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Lee, are you confirming you funded the Whitford wedding?" "No. I funded my daughter's wedding. The Whitfords just stole the credit." I turned to Eleanor. "You called me unsophisticated, but sophistication without integrity is just decoration." Her lips trembled. "You think humiliating me will earn you respect?" "No," I said, "but it might remind people what respect costs." Flashbulbs erupted, recording every second. Behind her, Haley stood frozen, tears streaking down her cheeks. When I walked out, reporters shouted for one last comment. I said only, "I didn't fight wars to be ashamed of who I am." The car door shut, and in the mirror I saw my reflection. No medals, no uniform, just a man who had finally reclaimed his honor. 2 months passed, and the noise finally began to fade. The Whitford Foundation was stripped of its license, and Eleanor was now the subject of a federal investigation. Charles resigned from his family's company, his spotless reputation left in ruins. And Haley, the rising star once praised as Seattle's next big name in PR, was quietly let go. The media had moved on, but silence remained, a silence heavy enough to echo. It was the kind that settles after a storm, when everyone realizes what's left can't be rebuilt. One cold evening, rain slammed against my windows in steady waves. Then came a knock at the door, soft, hesitant. When I opened it, Haley stood there, soaked through, eyes swollen. "Dad, I read everything. I saw what they did. You were right. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside, poured her a cup of coffee, and placed it on the table." She sat down, trembling. "I thought respect came from being admired," she whispered. "You showed me it comes from being worthy." "Drink," I said. "You'll need it for what comes next." Her voice cracked. "I lost everything? No. You lost what wasn't real. Now build something that is. Can I ever fix this? You can't fix the past, but you can fix yourself." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she reached across the table and hugged me. No apologies, no excuses, just the raw, heavy silence of two people finally telling the truth without words. For the first time in years, I felt her heartbeat against mine, steady and real. The little girl I once pulled from the ocean had found her way back, not to be saved, but to start saving herself, before leaving. She wiped her face and said, "Dad, I want to do something that matters. For veterans, for people like you, then start by earning their respect, not their pity." She nodded, stepped into the rain, and disappeared into the gray. I watched through the window as the streetlight flickered on her shoulders, whispering the words I hadn't said in years. "Welcome back, kiddo." A full year had passed since the storm. Portland was alive again, washed clean by spring rain. I walked into the downtown convention hall where hundreds of guests filled the room, business leaders, veterans, and families seated beneath a bright screen that read, "The Lee Fund for Veterans Families, founded by Haley Lee." At the center of the stage, Haley stood poised behind a podium, her voice steady and sure. "Last year, I told my father he wasn't invited. Tonight, I'm honored to invite him first." The crowd turned toward me as I rose from my seat. Every step to the stage felt heavier than the last, but not from pain, only from pride. The applause grew louder, echoing like waves against the walls. When I reached her, Haley slipped the navy watch I'd once given her back onto her wrist, the same one I'd engraved years ago. For Haley, my reason to keep fighting. Now. It gleamed under the lights as a symbol of something earned back. She took my hand and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled. That's what soldiers do. We don't quit on our own. The room fell silent, then erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but for once, the light didn't sting. It felt warm. Later that night, after the crowd had gone and the city had quieted, we drove out to St. John's Bridge, the same place I'd always stopped to think when life got too loud. The water below shimmered gold beneath the lamps, every ripple a reminder that even scars can shine when the night is calm enough. The ocean teaches patience, I said. It never fights the storm, it outlasts it. Haley smiled softly. So do fathers. I looked at her, the reflection of the bridge dancing in her eyes. And daughters, when they learn what honor means. We stood there as the wind moved around us, the city humming in the distance. Two silhouettes, flawed, forgiven, and finally whole, not bound by blood or perfection, but by truth. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man erased. I felt like a man invited home.